From the first stone tools to the digital age, here's the entire story of us in under 10 minutes. Our story begins 300,000 years ago with Neanderthals. But it was early Homo sapiens in Africa who would change everything. They spread across continents, developing language, art, and agriculture. The agricultural revolution sparked the first permanent settlements. Bronze and iron working launched the age of empires. From scattered tribes of hunters and gatherers, humanity took its first great leap. Along the fertile banks of great rivers, the seeds of civilization were sown. Here, in these cradles of life, the first great empires would rise, forever changing the course of human history. In the sun-scorched lands of North Africa, a civilization bloomed, nourished by the predictable rhythms of the Nile River. This was ancient Egypt. The river's annual flood deposited rich, black silt, creating a ribbon of fertile land in the midst of the desert. This gift of the Nile was the foundation upon which one of history's most enduring empires was built. For nearly 3,000 years, Egypt was ruled by pharaohs, divine kings who acted as intermediaries between the gods and humanity. They were tasked with maintaining Ma'at, the cosmic order of truth, balance and justice. This belief system permeated every aspect of Egyptian life. Their obsession with the afterlife drove them to construct monuments that defy time itself. The Great Pyramids were not just awe-inspiring structures, they were monumental tombs, complex machines designed to launch the pharaoh's soul into the eternal cosmos. Their walls, and the walls of countless temples, were covered in hieroglyphs, a sacred script that recorded their history, their myths, and their profound understanding of the universe. Meanwhile, to the east, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, another cradle of civilization emerged: Mesopotamia. Here, in Sumer, the world's first true cities rose from the plains, sprawling urban centers with massive ziggurats piercing the sky. It was in these bustling cities that humanity took a monumental leap forward: the invention of writing. On humble clay tablets, the Sumerians developed cuneiform, a wedge-shaped script, initially to keep track of grain and livestock. But it quickly evolved to record literature and the epic tales of heroes like Gilgamesh. This innovation laid the groundwork for complex administration, and later the Babylonian king Hammurabi would codify one of the earliest and most complete written legal codes, famously proclaiming a system of justice that would echo through the ages. Further east, along the banks of the Indus River, the enigmatic Harappan civilization flourished. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro were marvels of urban planning, featuring grid-like streets and advanced drainage systems, achievements unrivaled for thousands of years. They developed a sophisticated system of weights and measures and traded extensively with Mesopotamia. Yet, much about them remains a mystery. Their script has never been deciphered, leaving their beliefs and the reasons for their eventual decline shrouded in silence. Across the Mediterranean, on the rugged mainland of Greece, a warrior culture was taking shape. The Mycenaeans built formidable hilltop citadels like the legendary Mycenae. These were not yet philosophers, but kings and warriors whose exploits would be immortalized in the epic poems of Homer. Their Linear B script reveals a highly organized palace economy, and their golden treasures speak of immense wealth. They dominated the Aegean, but their world came to a sudden and violent end during the widespread Bronze Age collapse, plunging the region into a dark age. Yet, from their memory, the later glories of classical Greece would eventually rise. These ancient empires were the world's first great connectors. Through vast trade networks, ships and caravans moved not just goods like tin, cedar, and lapis lazuli, but also ideas, technologies, and cultures. The alphabet, born in the Near East, traveled west. Mathematical and astronomical knowledge from Babylon and Egypt laid the foundations for future science. Scribes and scholars meticulously copied texts, preserving knowledge for posterity. But this interconnected world was also a world of conflict. The drive for resources, territory, and glory fueled constant warfare. Empires rose on the backs of conquered peoples, and their magnificent capitals were often built with the spoils of war. The story of these first empires is a dual narrative of breathtaking innovation and brutal conquest, a legacy of light and shadow that continues to shape our world today. Great minds emerged, Confucius taught harmony and social order. Buddha showed the path to enlightenment and inner peace. Their teachings spread across continents, shaping billions of lives. Philosophy and religion became the backbone of civilizations. In the 3rd century BCE, the Mediterranean was a stage for two colossal powers, the maritime empire of Carthage and the burgeoning Roman Republic. Their collision was inevitable. The Punic Wars would not just determine a victor, they would reshape the known world. The conflict is legendary for the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca, a military genius who executed one of the most audacious plans in history. He marched an army, complete with war elephants, from Iberia, over the treacherous Pyrenees and the snow-capped Alps, descending into Italy itself. For over a decade, Hannibal ravaged the Italian peninsula, yet Rome refused to break. Through sheer resilience and the strategic genius of Scipio Africanus, who took the fight to Carthage's home turf, the tide turned. At the Battle of Zama, Hannibal was finally defeated. Rome's victory was total. Carthage was eventually razed to the ground, its people killed or sold into slavery. With its greatest rival annihilated, Rome stood as the undisputed master of the Mediterranean. This victory, born from a century of brutal conflict, fueled the transformation of the Republic, launching an empire that would dominate the Western world for centuries to come. But even the mightiest empires faced limits. Rome fell, and from its ashes, feudal kingdoms arose, ruled by monarchs who claimed absolute power by divine right. For centuries, the word of the king was law, but this would not go unchallenged. In 13th century England, a tyrannical King John, with his ruinous wars and exorbitant taxes, pushed his powerful barons to the breaking point. In 1215, they forced him to sign the Magna Carta, the Great Charter. While intended to protect the nobility, it embedded a revolutionary principle. The king himself was subject to the rule of law. It established that no free man could be imprisoned without a lawful judgment, a foundational concept for the right to a fair trial. Though often ignored, the Magna Carta became a potent symbol. It was a seed from which the concept of constitutional limits on power would grow, inspiring future generations to question authority. The idea that citizens possessed inherent rights, and that governments were accountable to the governed, began to take root. Common people began demanding rights and representation. This demand reached a thunderous crescendo in late 18th century France. The nation was a powder keg of inequality, with a decadent monarchy living in splendor while the Third Estate starved. Fueled by the radical ideas of the Enlightenment, of liberty, reason, and the rights of man, the people's anger exploded. On July 14, 1789, a Parisian mob stormed the Bastille, a fortress prison symbolizing royal despotism. The storming of the Bastille ignited the French Revolution. What followed was a chaotic, transformative decade. The Declaration of the Rights of Man proclaimed a new vision of society, but the revolution soon descended into the bloody Reign of Terror, where the guillotine became a grim instrument of radical justice. Out of this turmoil, Napoleon Bonaparte would rise, plunging Europe into war. Yet the old world was shattered. Monarchies fell as the ideals of democracy and a powerful new force, nationalism, spread across the continent. People began to see themselves not as subjects of a king, but as citizens of a nation. This seismic shift was amplified by a revolution in communication. Centuries earlier, Gutenberg's printing press had democratized knowledge. Now pamphlets and newspapers carried the seeds of change with unprecedented speed. Ideas traveled faster than ever before. Information became a weapon, empowering new social classes and fueling public debate. The French Revolution demonstrated the power of a mobilized populace. The age of mass movements had begun, setting the stage for the great ideological struggles to come. The dawn of the modern era was forged in fire and steam. The Industrial Revolution, beginning in the late 18th century, marked a fundamental shift in human existence. For millennia, life was tied to the land. Suddenly, everything accelerated. This wasn't just about new machines, it was a complete rewiring of society, moving populations from countrysides into dense, bustling cities. At the heart of this transformation was the steam engine. Perfected by James Watt, it became the tireless workhorse of the new age, driving factory machines and, most profoundly, transportation. Steam-powered locomotives, the iron horses, thundered across continents, shrinking vast distances. for the first time, goods and people could be transported on a massive, predictable scale, connecting markets like never before. As the world grew physically smaller, it also became more connected. The invention of the telegraph was as revolutionary as the railroad. Using a simple code, Samuel Morse's device allowed messages to travel at the speed of electricity. News that once took weeks to cross the ocean could now arrive in minutes. Global finance, journalism, and diplomacy were forever changed by this first global communications network, the Victorian Internet. As the 19th century closed, a new force redefined modernity: electricity. The war of the currents between Edison's DC and Tesla's AC was a battle for the future. AC's ability to be transmitted over long distances won out, making widespread electrification possible. The incandescent light bulb banished the night from cities, but light was just the beginning. Electric motors offered cleaner factory power, while the first appliances hinted at a future of domestic convenience. The 20th century roared to life on the back of these innovations. Henry Ford didn't invent the automobile, but with his revolutionary assembly line, he put the world on wheels. This new method of mass production drastically lowered costs, making the car accessible to the average family. The result was a profound reshaping of society, as people moved to sprawling suburbs, creating a new culture built on mobility, freedom, and the open road. While the world was being physically reshaped, a quieter revolution was taking place. The first electronic computers, room-sized behemoths like ENIAC, were built for complex military calculations. But the invention of the transistor and the integrated circuit changed everything. These tiny components allowed computers to become exponentially smaller, faster, and cheaper. And by the 1980s, the personal computer had launched the information age from our very own desktops. The final piece of the puzzle was connection. Born from a US military project called ARPANET, the internet was designed as a decentralized network. It was open to the world when Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, creating a user-friendly interface of websites and hyperlinks. A global network of fiber optic cables was laid beneath the oceans, forming the physical backbone for a world of information, while satellites beamed connectivity to the most remote corners of the planet. Today, that digital world is in the palm of our hands. The smartphone has untethered the internet from the desktop, making it a constant companion. Social media platforms have redefined our communities and conversations. We are generating data at an unimaginable rate, the digital exhaust of our lives, which is analyzed by artificial intelligence to power everything from entertainment to scientific research. From the first spark of a steam engine to the global neural network of the internet, the modern era has been a relentless acceleration of change. From stone tools to smartphones, we've come incredibly far. If you love history in bite-sized form, subscribe for more weekly deep dives.